Hello YouTube. I'll talk today a little bit about Terratest. Terratest, a way to automate test cases, test suites, unit functional integration for Terraform, which we use at work, Packer. I may someday use it for Packer. For me, especially Terraform, and maybe Packer later. The interesting thing about this one is it's written golang, whatever you call it. So what I've done is, again, using my trusty dev container, created a Go script that pulls in the GitHub repos under development that we're working on. There's a team of me, I don't know, 5, 6 of us, right? We'll just say working on some Terraform modules, which took a little bit of doing because these GitHub repos are set to internal or private, so I had to create a personal access token here. The big thing about this, I was kind of talking with someone on Twitter about this, you have to be real careful about which permissions give the token, because if the token is compromised, I've gone ahead and assigned every possible permission to the token. Good, you see where I'm going with that. So set all that to lead up to the idea that I've got this Go script. It pulls in, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 GitHub repos. So it's got like the major cloud providers, right? Azure, AWS, GCP, and so on. I think it also installs OPA, which I talked about in my last video, and it installs TFSec, which I'll talk about in a future video. But it does a go get, pulls in the Git repo, and don't quite want to show those. I mean, maybe that stuff is specific to work and leave that piece out of it. However, what happens is after this script runs, wind up with Terraform directory, and then under that a per cloud provider directory, and then in there I've got a directory for the modules under test, and then my test folder. So this is the same test folder I used in my last video when I showed the policy as code test cases. I like keeping everything for a test in the test folder, but this is a different part of that same structure. So the first thing I'd like to show is unit test case. This was one of the first things I did just to get a feel for how the framework worked, right? So kind of play testing, figuring out where the edges of the puzzle were. So to that end, I've got a hello world test here. And I alluded to this being a unit test. Okay, so to do this, what I wound up doing was using Go build tags. So with the build tags, you can specify, you can tag your test cases, right? And I wound up, I found a DigitalOcean tutorial. I like these guys a lot. I have some stuff on DigitalOcean. I made a unit build tag, and then to be compatible with other test cases in the same directory, I used, here we go, sorry for so much scrolling, but I used these booleans. So my build tags wound up looking like this. So in this case, the Terraform Hello World example test written in Go that calls the Terratest framework is tagged to unit, not integration. Booleans there if you like, but essentially that's how I got it to do what I'm about to show you. So the first trick was to say, see if I could get it to work with my tag, and they recommend a 30-minute timeout for these tests. There was an explanation there, that if you're interested, but that's the purpose of that addition to the tag and the verbose flag there. So I'm actually running Go, and it's going to call the tests in this directory that are tagged with the unit tag. Okay, and as you can see, we've run the test Terraform Hello World example. It did a Terraform init, and I think it didn't apply, but it's a no-op, right, for us, this one. One more thing I want to mention about unit testing is once I had this piece work for Azure, and I actually wrote a couple unit tests for AWS, I wanted to make it automatable. I wanted to integrate it with CI. And a lot of times what I'll do is, if you've watched my other videos, I'll use a makefile, because it's sort of like a shell script, but it's very portable and so on, right? So I have some reasons that I like makefiles. So what I wound up doing was adding a makefile directive for unit testing. So the result here is that I can run make unit, and it's, I think, going to have a little more output because it's not just Azure, it's also AWS in this case. I did those two cloud providers, but just to give you a sense, so there it goes to AWS. How it looks. Okay, so this one did a bit more. And real quick, we'll just look at the results. We have in AWS another Hello World example telling us, hey, that one passed. And then a basic, Terraform basic, another example. Curious to see, what did I do here? Oh, it looks like I made some sample outputs on that one. Okay. Just seeing if I could catch the output from an execution test. And then again, there's our Azure test there at the end. Okay, so the nice result here is we've got a makefile driven way to run our unit test case suite, right? It's a suite now because there are multiple cases across multiple cloud providers, and this lends itself very readily to a GitHub action. Okay, good result there. So now I've got the basics down, right? And I'm thinking, okay, how do I apply this to our module testing, developing Terraform modules? I tend not to, we'll just say, use a ton of Microsoft products by choice, but our customers have a need to understand that stuff, right? That world. So I wanted to kind of kill two birds with one stone by trying to pull together a lot from Azure, right? So to build, in our case, what our company does is we build security products, right? So firewalls, and deploying those in cloud environments. I wanted to do something that mirrored closer to, matched more closely what our customers might expect, and learn Azure, and demonstrate all this by building this new framework, this Terratest framework, and use that sort of as a demo to show that this stuff can be useful while I learned. So with my goals in mind, I came up with some Terraform to deploy a VM series firewall in Azure, and in Go, I wrote a small set of test cases. Okay, so I had to take a break for just a second there. One thing I realized was that I forgot to do a login. So, without further ado, kick off functional test case. Described it. And let's see what happens. Like it did in init. And I have it set to no color. The reason is sometimes when you do color codes, when you're testing, when you're inside a pipeline or something, it really can wreak havoc with your log files, make them hard for humans and computers. Kind of a person who thinks that code output, all this stuff, like it should be more machine readable. I think that's a way to get more speed out of things, is take the humans out of the loop, but that's a story for another time. So it looks like well, that was quick. It created our stuff and it's already destroying it. Let me just make sure. Oh, it looked like it had to do some replacements, is what's happening. So a previous run, I think, is some of the pieces are being cleared away. If you don't do, I'm not going to remember the keyword now. Depends on. There's a way to tell Terraform that certain resources should persist across applies, if that makes sense. So if you apply more than once, not quite idempotency, it's just this idea that you create a resource, and even though Terraform may want to dismantle that resource, on subsequent creation of associated resources, it is not able to. So it looks like this is working. I think the only thing I could show here is the result from the 4 test cases I showed earlier. But I think overall this is a great result, because it shows that, for me, that I can make the Azure stuff with Terraform and programmatically, provision everything from the resource group on down. But it also demonstrates that there's a way to tie all that into Terratest. It shows that we've got working scripts written in Go that are test cases, and then sort of gives us a glimpse into the future, how all this could become a part of our CI pipeline to the extent that needed to. The other thing I think about this is my opinion, my preference is that if somebody, a maintainer, a developer of the code base, goes in and makes a change, they should also be responsible at that time for making a change to the associated test case. If there is no associated test case, create one. Because I don't know that I'll show it here, but there is such an idea as coverage. You want to know that your test coverage, the percent of lines of code that you, your developers, your team have written are covered by, are directly tied to test cases. For example, if there's a function takes the function takes an input 0 through 99. Well, I want to know that there's bounds and range checking on that, right? So we test to fail, right? We feed it a -1, we feed it 101, 100, right? Out of range, in range, so test to pass. I think that meets the minimum standard for test coverage, right? Because now that function has full coverage for it. But even taking it a step further, I think there are other things that should be tested. That's just pass, fail, bounds and range, right? You, as a security person, gonna do some fuzzing, I call it. Maybe that's the simplest way to describe fuzzing. Being similar to bounds and range. Well, anyway, I'm stalling because this is going to take a while. It's standing up a full Palo Alto next-gen firewall. This does take a few minutes to first bring that image up, get all the plumbing right, all these routes, networking stuff. I think I'll stop here, but thanks for watching. Let me know what you think. Talk to you next time.